Hello and welcome. This is your host McKenna. Welcome to another episode of Crack Cinnamon episode. Today we'll be talking about social class and in particular how language is viewed within the different social class systems and the impact it has on human beings and the ability to study, to read, to write, and how it affects education as a whole, and obviously the impact it has in the future of a person in being able to secure the right education, the right job, and eventually be financially independent. So and then it's a whole cycle all over again. So what is social class? It's basically a hierarchical structure, whereby individuals are grouped together as a collection based on their socio-economic status. So basically they are sharing the same social economic status. So I'm sure you've heard of the class system. It's very obvious in the modern world we're living today, and it came about really in the 19th century. The usage of it, and the popularity. Before, we had obviously empires, ranks, orders, feudal systems, and that was in the 18th century. And then towards the 19th century, when we had industrial revolutions and political revolutions, especially in Europe, the terminologies changed, became more about social class. And that's because people started working in factories. We started having a proper working class, as opposed to, in the 1920s. In the 1920s, when we started even seeing a change of even how people dress, and if you remember you could recognize somebody's wealth from the kind of hat they wore, the top hats and things like that. And when you think of during the King Henry's time and things like that, there was also the very poor, like the peasants. So it's derived from that. So we have, obviously, on the very lower scale, the very poor, and then we have those who have low income. Usually some people class them together, different books and scholars, but I tend to see if you're in low income, you're earning something. It's not like you're poor and there's no income coming in here. And then we have the working class, the traditional working class, and we have the middle class, the upper middle class, the wealthy. From the wealthy we have the elite, and then definitely we have people like our queen, the royal family. So obviously they sit on top of this class system. And when you look at it, really, different countries, different nations do have a whole class system, whether it's in a traditional setup, whether it's indigenous setup. There is hierarchical system, and it's been argued on many fronts. It's there for controlling people, it's there for the sake of political influence, and for sure it does, because the whole Karl Marx theory is influenced heavily on class system and the idea of having capital and those who rely on wages. So obviously, if you're on the lower end of the scale, those who are poor and of low income, the way they view language and how language is used and how language is introduced. And here, by what I mean by language is not only how you speak in terms of communication. It means also writing. It means understanding. because language is very important. Language is the first introduction of understanding someone's customs, understanding what they believe in, understanding your whereabouts. And there's been lots of studies of showing the discrepancies and the gaps between the class system. And this is because really, when you compare children who are born to working class or middle class, they have a set of words already accumulated. Some, even in the middle class, their children by the age of 2 have already been introduced to 3-4 languages. Okay, when you look about the low income, the poor, the language is very simple, very narrow, because of the surroundings their parents are exposed to these children. So it begs belief about what you should do as a parent when you have children, and some of the things you decide, the decisions you make for your children really set them up to fail in a way, because our society is already set up in a hierarchy system, and especially now in the 21st century, where it's about capital, how much you have in terms of assets, in terms of investment, and whether you're dependent again on wages. That makes a difference, because it makes a difference where you go to school. Do you go to a public school? Do you go to a private school? And what kind of a private school is it? And for the wealthy, the rich rather, how they view language is really about connections. Again, all about connections, all about networking. So sometimes they take this children to very expensive schools, very elite schools, very exclusive schools, not because of course of the value of education they'll get, but mainly because of the connections they'll get. Because if you're going to, especially these schools in Switzerland, really there are like 400 kids the whole school, and they split the term between winter, where they go in like ski resorts, and during summer and autumn they in these other areas, and their curriculum is very diverse. And even they have opening ceremonies. Think about that. So language is quite important, because if you think about it, especially in England right now, when you talk about social class, and if you join it with ethnicity, especially when you look at the BME community, when you go to schools, especially public schools, a lot of BME black and ethnic minority children, are already put in the lower sets for school, and that shows their reading levels is quite low, which is unfortunate really, because it doesn't say that they're dumb or think. It's just, if you trace back, it's all about their home surroundings. If they're coming from a working class family, who's there to reinforce the language, who is always talking to them. It's interesting, when your child is born, you start speaking to your child, and a lot of people have been discouraged. I remember even my own family was shocked when I had my baby, and I used to talk to my baby all the time. I still do that. And they're like, why are you doing that? And they don't understand. But your child picks up on things. They pick up on language, emotion, expressions on your face, on their face, and some of these words stick, and forms their first languages. Like my child started saying mom when she was 2 months. I tell people and they think it's a joke, but it's true, and it's things like that. And it's very important that we understand this is what sets people apart, especially now. There are things that can, education can decide, it can move you along classes, and of course talents and gifts. I mean, you can be not, book smart, for example, like David Beckham, but he has magic feet, and now he's in a different class system. I'm sure he's probably wealthy or elite. He falls within that, and he's influencing a lot of things already. He's, where there's the royal family, you will see him, So I was very fascinated, and the fact that how you speak to your child, how you introduce them to books and to reading, reinforcing, staying, connected to your child, ensuring that you're checking their homework, asking them questions, inquisitive. If you look at children, even in the playground, compare when you go with your child to the park and starts, just observing the conversation at the playground, you can almost tell which class system they come from or what grouping they have. All this really is, there's a political edge to it, definitely, in grouping people, and that's why even in England there's a huge pressure for the postcode you live in as well, because it affects kind of schools the children go to. It affects the kind of education they get, the kind of support they get. That's why some schools also, they have learning mentors. Those who have learning disabilities, they have support in that way, because they understand the importance of language. So there's a correlation here. That's what I'm trying to say. There's a correlation between language and class. Certainly we used to watch a lot of shows back in the 90s. The actors, the actresses, how they carry themselves, the kind of way they used to speak is not the same as the kind of shows right now on TV, which are more popular, which are pop created. So they have more simpler language. It's more of a working class or kind of language and slang used. Okay, so I want us to pay more attention to language and how you use it, communication. And I always say there's nothing lost. Is, for example, if you struggle in communication, there's help out, there's books to read, there's speech therapists, there's all kind of things that are out there and able. In terms of class though, you're almost pigeonholed in this thing called working class, upper middle, and obviously the ideal is the middle class, because you're not too wealthy, you're not poor, so you can make your own decisions. You can have healthcare, you can go on holiday, you can buy a house, as opposed to those on the lower side. Okay. And there was a survey done actually about Great Britain, how they viewed the class system, and who are less moral. I think 61% of the people who were sampled thought they were very wealthy. But you see, studies have shown wealthy people don't really care about morality in terms of good or bad. It's whether if this thing works for them. Is it business sound, money wise? Though there are some who are really pegged on ethical morals and doing the right thing. So it's been a fascinating research. We'll be looking more. I posted on our social media. There's a leaflet. It shows how different things in our society are viewed in the different class system. We'll try and unpack this different aspects. For example, like education. How is it viewed in the lowest side of the system? Okay, for example, those who are poor. and the wealthy, how they view education, how they view money. So thank you for tuning in to this episode of Crush Cinnamon. See you later. Share and give feedback, and let's continue the conversations.